this is basically how the whole thing starts. So we start with a map of the area, right? And we Photoshop that up and make sure that it's the right size and everything. And then we just kind of use that, to build out the stadium. And this is my favorite thing about this one is that it's on this, you've got this really awesome slope, right? That the whole thing sits on. And that's such a challenge for me, because most of them are on a flat piece of ground. And so I was really excited to do this one because that's architecturally challenging, right? Like to make a model of it is even more challenging. And so I was super, super stoked to do this one in the first place. And then, we build out the frame and make sure all the parts are there. And then each of these parts either gets cut out of a heavy duty paper. It's called Bristol board. It's kind of like a poster board, but it bends really well, but it's still pretty rigid. Or some of the parts get 3D printed. Like, so for example, the whole roof system is 3D printed. These are individually 3D printed, and then these are painted, and then these are painted, and then we put it all together, kind of like a model airplane or a model car or something. And then this one in particular has a little special thing going on. So this piece right here, right, that sits under the dahlia.
Mm-hmm.
And what that is actually a system of 3 chambers that we're going to pump red smoke through.
Oh, hell yeah. I heard about this in one of your other streams that you did, and I was excited I can't wait for that video to come out, so I'll definitely keep
I've never done one with smoke before, so I'm really excited to see how this goes.
This seems like a really daunting task for someone as newbie as me in architecture. So what about like dimensions and stuff, blueprints? Where do you get that kind of stuff, or how does that work?
So Google's actually really, really good about giving you dimensions and clarity on scale and things like that. So I don't really need actual plans. I do most of it by eye. The challenge is getting it so that the human eye looks at these pieces and says, "Oh yeah, that's correct," right? Because if one piece is not scaled properly compared to another piece, and obviously when you shrink something down, you have to take some liberties, right? You can't just shrink it down and make it absolutely perfect to scale. Otherwise, like for example, these trusses in real life, they're probably not even 1 meter, right? It's probably not. It's probably 1.5 meters, right? Like this span right here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In real life, that's not that big.
No.
Right? But in the model, it has to be big enough to build it physically. So that's really the challenge in what I do, is like finding that balance where you look at it and your brain thinks, oh yeah, that's correct, even though it's technically not to scale.
It's a bit of an illusion, you would say, right?
Yeah, kind of. But this is something that I wouldn't have, maybe I had part of me that was like inherently kind of good at that. But I got so much better at that by going to architecture school, because that's the kind of thing they teach you. You know what I mean?
Can you specialize in a software that's specifically for this kind of stuff for stadiums, or was it more like open-ended? And
so it's interesting because every school teaches a different piece of software, and there's a bunch of different pieces of software that do exactly what this does. Well, not exactly, but they're similar. There's probably 4 or 5 different pieces of software that do this. Basically the same thing. My school taught us Rhino.
Mm-hmm.
So once they taught us the software, it was basically like, go use whatever you want. Just we had to produce drawings and renderings and images and models at the end. So Rhino's just a tool, right? It's not specific to stadiums. It's not even specific to architecture. It's just a way to model things in 3 dimensions. Like, for example, if we hide that, we could just build a box, right? And that's
right.
it. Or, you want to do like
it can be as basic as you want almost, right?
Yeah, look, we can build a sphere and then you can plop it inside of it. And, it's just basic 3D modeling. And once you've learned how to model things in the computer, right, then it becomes simply about what's the best tool to use to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish.
Right. Okay. So that's the software end of it. How long does that usually take? Because I remember in one of your streams, you were talking about this Maracana, the specific stadium, in like December. So what's the time frame for one of these?
So it's interesting. The modeling usually takes 20 to 40 hours. I would say it's like a regular 1 week of work, right? To get it totally done, top to bottom, it's about a week. Then building it in real life takes probably another week. So, so this is also kind of goes back to like my business strategy, which is why I sell them directly to the club, because they'll order 2 or 3 of them. And then I'm only doing the digital once a month.
Right, I gotcha.
Right? Because if I'm selling them to like individual people and they're like, well, I want this one and I want this one and I want this one. And all of a sudden my workload doubles or triples because it's just the digital part of it takes so much time.
Right. Do you enjoy the digital part more or the physical part more?
Both of it is fun. Both of it, yeah? Yeah, both of them. Both parts of it are really fun for me. So that part, it's not that it bothers me. It's just like, you know what I mean? There's only so much time. Sure. And, in order to kind of like maximize everything. Yep. No worries. Sorry, there was a phone call.
No worries. We can go back. Unless something else you want to show me, we can go back to.
I thought there was another one. I don't think that was the right 3D model. There was another one.
Because I think you are missing the lights there, right?
Yeah, and I'm missing the building next to it. Yeah. No, there was another one. Oh, this one maybe? There we go.
Yeah, This is the latest and greatest.
Wait, where did it go?
That's another thing I guess I wanted to ask you is like, what makes you determine what buildings around the stadium you're going to keep? What buildings around the stadium are of significance?
So that's a really good. I mean, that's just research, right? Yeah. Like that really just comes down to research, and this is part of this. This is also the fun part about like doing it on Twitter and making friends along the way, and because people will always tell me. Right? Yeah. Like they'll be like, oh, you forgot this thing. And usually I didn't forget it. Usually I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Right.
But that's not always true, right? Like inevitably, again, I didn't grow up in Belgrade. I didn't grow up in Marseille. I didn't grow up in Amsterdam. So inherently there's going to be things that I don't know about. And it's so cool to have that interactive part from people around the world and the fans of the club that say, oh, well, yeah, but make sure you do this because it's really important. It's like part of the culture, right? And so I get to learn about those things along the way, and then I can make little changes as we build it. And it's just super fun, man.
You can't know 100 years or whatever. Most clubs are pretty old, right? Years of history and know every single detail. So you got to need a little bit of help, right? That makes sense.
Right. Like I can research it, and I'm totally capable of that, but inevitably there's going to be things that I won't find. So
you'll find folklore. I mean, you won't find folklore. Like you won't find the inner stories, the inner circle stories. Yeah.
Yeah. So here you go.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that one's got the light posts with the building and the grade change and the player tunnel and all that good stuff.
And how detailed are you looking to make things like the stands, the chairs, the field?
So the stands and the chairs are not physically modeled. They're just flat surfaces in real life. And it just comes down to the scale, right? Like if I was doing these like 2 or 3 times bigger, then I would do all the steps for each row of seats and I would do chairs. But because these are so small, you just at some point there's details that you can't do. For me, though, it's a representation, right? At the end of the day, it's not meant to be a perfect replica. It's meant to be an emotionally evoking piece of art. And so as long as I'm getting that response out of people, I feel like I've succeeded. Whether it includes every little detail or not isn't necessarily the point.
Right. And I feel like the average fan is going to be so thrilled that you are making, they understand the amount of, just by looking at it, you understand the someone put their blood, sweat, and tears into making one of these, right? You put a lot of time and effort, so they right away would never be like, oh, you're missing the third row on this like side. Like no one's that.
No, it's and it's never like that. But of course there's a balance there too, because right, it's like I aim to evoke those emotions and I aim to bring that out of people. And so I take very seriously my responsibility to be as accurate as I can be.
Right, of course.
But in terms of like the actual little pieces and how do we represent those pieces, some of them are a little bit more detailed than others because of, where they sit on the stadium and everyone's different, right? Like I'm thinking about like the San Siro, right? You have to have those circular ramps on the outside, and if it was just like a flat piece that just looked like it had a ramp, that wouldn't be good enough.
Right. That's an iconic feature of that stadium.
Right, exactly. So it's about, for me, it's about doing my research and taking those things seriously so that the representation speaks the way it's meant to speak.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have pictures of the completed one for this one? If not, I can also add them later in post edit, but of the Maracana.
You mean like photos of the actual model?
Yeah.
Well, it's sitting right next to me. Maybe I can grab it really quick.
Even better, yeah.
That's what we're here for, man.
I didn't know where it was. I didn't want you to go after and look for it, and
No, she's right here.
All right, can we switch back to you as the main screen?
Let me do a stop share there.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. That's lovely. Yeah. That's awesome. It makes me feel like I'm home.
And I don't know if you can see, but I just started adding all the trees up on this.
Right.
Yeah, so all the trees will be there by the time it's done. We even got, you probably can't see it on the video, but you can see there's the little buses in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's right next to the player's entrance. And there's a couple of little tricks still to come that I was telling you about.
I can't wait. I'm really excited about that one. That one for me is obviously the most special, but like I've seen a lot of your work, and I like the Amsterdam one. Really, that one seemed like a hard one, right? There's so much levels of detail to that one. It's such an iconic stadium.
Took a really long time. And in fact, if you're interested, I'll pull up that
let's do
3D model so you can see how detailed it really is. Man, that one's super deep.